Welcome to the Modern Husbands Podcast, where every other week we host national thought leaders to discuss how spouses can partner to manage money and the home together and live happier lives. Today, we are honored to welcome Skip Schweiss. The topic is the conversation about money you do not want to miss. Skip is currently the volunteer past president of the Financial Planning Association, the leading membership organization for certified financial planners. In 2020, he concluded a 12-year career with TD Ameritrade, where he most recently served as president of TD Ameritrade Trust Company and managing director of advisory Advocacy. Mr. Schweiss directly influenced legislation and regulation, including the Secure Act of 2019 and the DOE Conflict of Interest Rule, among others.
Skip, it's an honor to have you. Thanks so much for joining us today.
It's great to be here with you guys. I think we're going to have a fun conversation.
We are definitely looking forward to it. Let's just start with your professional background. Tell us about what you've done just over the past 5 years.
Past 5 years. So I spent 12 years at TD Ameritrade. I was in their what we called our institutional division. We provided back office services to investment advisors around the country. I was in a particular kind of a subdivision of that in Denver, where we had our trust company, where we provided retirement plan services to retirement plans that investment advisors were advising on. And along with that, the last 10 years I was there, I also was involved in public policy work for TD Ameritrade. So I would shuttle back and forth to DC and talk with members of Congress and staffs and various regulatory bodies about policies and how we might make them a little better for consumers. And that was really interesting work to have a front row seat to that kind of policy making. When Schwab bought TD Ameritrade, I think that occurred in about 2019. I left the next year in 2020, took a year off. I highly recommend that, by the way, for anybody who can pull that off. And then I just joined one of our former client firms as its CEO. It's an asset management firm on the West Coast, which, Brian, you asked me before we came on the air what that scene is behind me. And that's my view out my airplane window as I fly from Denver to LA every week.
Awesome. When we spoke earlier, and then I started to dig into your background, I became overjoyed with, in particular, your work with lawmakers, because you've made such a substantial difference in the lives of so many people. And so I want to make sure that our listeners understand, some of those things that have changed that are improving their lives, and they might not even know it. So we're going to get to that in a little bit. That's our teaser. But I know Christian right now is salivating at the opportunity to talk about the wild ride of the stock market, because it is all over the place right now. Christian, what we were talking earlier, I know there was something that was pressing you wanted to ask Skip.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, the peaks and valleys look something similar to Mr. Schweiss's background there.
Yeah, right.
Very nice to meet you. Honored to get to work with you today. So Brian's right. It's been a wild ride in the stock market over the last, let's say, 15 years. And in particular, it's been pretty painful, I think, for a lot of retail investors and institutional investors alike. So I would love to hear if you can provide any insights. What can regular folks do? What guardrails can we put in place to not make foolhardy or too quick investment decisions in the way the market works today?
Yeah, such a great question. One thing is not to get too caught up in the day-to-day. The firm I work at now, that's our business, to watch the day-to-day for our clients. As we're recording this today, the market has had one heck of a ride. We got a bad inflation piece of news this morning, and the market dropped quite a bit, and then it just soared after that. So I would really discourage people from really getting too stressed out about all these little things. At least they look very little when you stand back and look at it over time. I mean, over the sweep of a person's working lifetime, basically equity markets go like that. You just got to watch the valleys. You're right about the last 15, 20 years. I mean, we had if you go back a little further than that, we had the dot-com crash in 2000, where we lost about half the value of the market. We had the 2008 financial crisis, where we lost about half the value of the market. You come back, you hang in there, and you come back. We had the pandemic that fell on us in March of 2020. We lost a lot of value there. And this year, as interest rates are starting up and inflation, we're down 25% this year. But again, over the grand sweep of time, our economy grows, and the companies that are part of our economy grow. And I just encourage people to put as much money away as they can, stay invested, especially in your first, say, half of your working life, maybe longer. Be in the stock market. This is not me giving financial advice, but this is just how I look at the world as an individual, a worker, an investor, just like all of us on the screen here are. I'm 60 years old, and I'm still, the vast majority of what I have is in the equity markets. And I just stomach, these downdrafts in years like this. I think it also helps to consult a professional. A lot of us, when you see surveys about where people get their financial advice, often the number one answer is a family member or a friend.
Ooh.
That might be okay. But, we don't ask a family member or a friend to, operate on us if we have cancer, or to build our house for us. There are professionals who do this.
I hope not.
I hope not. Yeah. Unless you have a really, really special, highly qualified friend in one of those areas. But there are professionals who do these things and can help you stay on track, can help guide you and kind of match up your investments with your goals and how much risk you can stomach and things like that. So summarize that by saying, especially in the first maybe half, 2/3 of your working life, stock as much money away as you can in equities, and don't look at it too often. And I think you'll be happily surprised when you do look at it over time. And then secondly, don't be afraid to get professional help to guide you in these decisions.
Yeah, very true advice. You've had a amazing career. You've done a lot. And one thing that I'm, really excited for that you did that you have done, and thankful that you've done, you've lobbied for the Secure Act, which passed in 2019. So for our listeners, can you explain what changed as a result of that legislation, and how that helped, your everyday investor?
Yeah, so this is something we worked on, and I certainly was far from alone in advocating for some of these changes. But it came out of a recognition that a couple things. People are not saving enough for retirement, number one. Number two, if they don't save for retirement at work through their workplace plan or 401k or whatever it is, they're probably not saving for retirement at all. And number three, people are living and working longer than ever. I know a lot of people in their 70s in the workplace. That's not abnormal anymore. So it's one of the rare things in Washington where there's really been bipartisan support to try to help, back to that word nudge, to try to nudge companies to set up retirement plans for their employees and employees to invest in those plans. So one of the things it did was it allowed small companies to join a pooled plan, because it takes time and money to run a plan. And it's pretty complicated. The laws and regulations around running a retirement plan for a business can be pretty complicated. The business owner is busy running their business. And, they're probably not an expert in running a plan. They might not think they can afford the time or the money. So one of the things that law did, and we pushed for this for a lot of years, is it allowed smaller companies to pool together into a pooled plan, so that they didn't have all the responsibility of running the plan. It's more cost effective, because research shows that the smallest companies don't generally have retirement plans, and an awful lot of people work for very small companies. Companies with fewer than 50 employees, only half of them even have a plan for their employees. So that's one thing it did. It pushed the it's called the required minimum distribution age. So once you reach a certain age, the law says you have to start taking money out of your plan because you've been able to put it away in a tax advantaged way for your whole working life. Basically, Congress wants they want to get that tax money back at some point. So for a very long time, that age was 70 and a half. People ask me why a half. I'm sure it was a compromise at some point. Push that to 72. Again, that's a reflection of people living longer, working longer. If you're still drawing a paycheck in your 70s, you probably don't want to also be mandated to pull money out of your retirement account.
Right.
And now you're paying taxes on your paycheck and your retirement withdrawals. That can kick you into higher tax brackets. It can impact Medicare, taxes on Social Security, all kinds of things. So that's another thing it did. It allowed people to take money out of their retirement plan at work upon the birth or adoption of a child without penalty. So that was nice. I'm going to put on my readers here and look at my notes. Oh, and another nice thing it did is it allowed long-term part-time workers to join their company retirement plan. A lot of plans say you have to work at least 30 hours a week in order to be considered full-time and be part of the retirement plan. And there's a lot of people who want to, for whatever their life circumstances are, want to be in the workplace part-time. Work 20 or 25 hours a week. And if that's your work life, now you can join your company retirement plan. So that was a nice thing as well. Last thing I'll mention is it allowed, this is not retirement, still retirement focused, but 529 plans. It's a wonky name, but it comes out of the tax code where you can put money away in a tax advantaged way for higher education expenses. It expanded the uses you can use that money for to homeschooling, private schools, even to pay down your student loans. We also know that there's a student loan problem in this country. So it really did a lot of things, but it was kind of focused on that nudge, to nudge companies to set up retirement plans for their employees and to nudge employees to go into them and also have a little more in the way of exit ramps for people. Sometimes people say, well, I don't want to join the plan because I'm going to have a baby and we're going to need the money. So that's where the provisions like that come out in these bills.
Well, there's something else in the 529K that I just learned. My son one of my children is a sophomore and he wants to be a pilot. He's taking flying lessons. I can pay for those lessons through his 529K.
That's right.
Yeah. And I recall you early on, you talked about, the importance of small businesses pooling money together to make the retirement plans more affordable for them. And that triggered a memory of one of my relatives on my wife's side who was paying really high 401k fees. And this relative worked at a small company. And I hadn't realized why until you just said that. And it presumably whoever was working with that company had to charge high fees because they were working with such a small group of people. And that law now changed and they can pool their resources together to make it more affordable so more people can retire. So hopefully if you're a listener and you're not aware of this and you own a small business, seek some ways in which you can pool your resources with others to provide more affordable retirement for your employees. Or if you're an employee, talk to your boss, maybe share this with them.
Yeah, there are institutions that sponsor these pooled plans. So I'm sure you could just do an internet search and find them. And to your point, there's scale. Scale is a real thing, and by pooling a bunch of small businesses together, you can get lower fees than you would on your own.
Yeah, well said. So I know Christian and I were talking about you'll find a theme with us about making sure that the person that is helping you with your personal finances is putting your best interest first. Christian, you looked into the Department of Labor conflict of interest rule. I couldn't wrap my mind around it. Can you maybe talk to Skip about that?
Yeah, it's pretty complex. First of all, before we get into the weeds there, really appreciate your humility. I admire you immensely. And so when Dr. Ross earlier was saying, hey, you worked on the Secure Act, your first point was, yeah, well, I wasn't alone. I was one of many.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to give you a quick shout out for that. Appreciate learning from humble, wise folks like yourself. Okay, yes. So what is the Department of Labor conflict of interest rule? Why is it important for listeners, folks to understand?
First of all, I think you're recording this, so I would like to get the recording later so I can show it to my wife that someone called me humble and wise. I just
That's what I'm here for, Mr. Schweiss. Just setting you up for success in the home.
We're all about creating happier marriages.
Thank you. Now, what was the question? No. Department of Labor, boy, I won't do this to you. I could talk for an hour or more about this because I worked on this from 2010. Why is the year 2010 important? That's the year the Department of Labor started down this journey. And I know personally the Assistant Secretary of Labor who initiated this journey, Phyllis Borsey, and she told me that 2010, the oldest baby boomers were turning 64. And why that's important is we were about to have this huge wave, this huge demographic wave leaving the workforce and entering their retirement years. And what do we do when we leave the workforce and enter retirement? Probably we take the money out of our company retirement plan and we put it into an IRA. And in the Department of Labor's words, they were going from, as you said, Christian, this gets really complicated really fast, but the rules governing company retirement plans are really stringent as far as what you can and can't do, what you can and can't invest in, what kind of advice you can receive, and what the standards are around that. The rules governing IRAs are not as stringent. And what the Department of Labor was worried about is these trillions of dollars were going to be coming out of these really well-protected company retirement plans into they actually used this term in one of their releases, the wild, wild west of IRAs. And they were worried about that. So what they sought to do is extend the protections. It's called ERISA, the Employee Retirement Income Security Act. This goes all the way back to 1974. It's a great law that's very protective of American workers in these retirement plans. They sought to extend that, and I'm oversimplifying a little, but they sought to extend those protections to IRAs. Well, they put it out there. They got a lot of pushback. They had to pull it back. They had to repropose it. It finally got passed in, I believe it was 2016, to show you how slow these wheels turn sometimes. And then it got challenged in court, and it got overturned in 2018. And then the department went back. They pulled back some of the more objectionable provisions, and they came out with it again. And maybe not surprising in America, it's being litigated again. But for now, it's the law. But it did extend greater protections to people who were invested in IRAs. Not quite as stringent as what the Department of Labor was originally looking for, but better. And I'll give you the one thing it really does. So let's say I'm retiring. I go to a financial advisor and I say, hey, I'm retiring. I've accumulated all this money in my 401k over the years. What do you think I should do with it? And historically, frankly, the financial advisor would say, well, I think you should put it into an IRA and I will help you with that. It's not quite so simple anymore. The financial advisor now has to, under this rule, prove that they really have to do an analysis and show you the analysis that if they're going to advise you to put it into an IRA that they help you with, that's truly in your best interest is the term. And they have to look at the investment options. They have to look at the costs. They have to look at the services. There are various other things they have to look at. They have to present you with a written document showing their analysis, kind of a show your work as to why that recommendation is in your best interest. It might be in your best interest to leave the money in your company retirement plan or to do something else with it. So that's the biggest thing it did, which I think was a great change, really to the benefit of workers.
because before, but one of our fears is that somebody is going to advise a friend, a family member, to do something that's not in their best interest, that's suitable, right? But the person advising them makes a heck of a lot of money if they can convince them to do this suitable thing. So one of the things that I would like to address for our listeners is that if they are considering switching financial planners, or if let's say they are looking for a financial planner, what do you suggest that they look for, and what are some of the questions that they should offer, that they should ask the financial planner?
Yeah, your use of the word suitable was not just in passing. That's a kind of a legal term, which actually we've moved past as well with a different regulation from the SEC. Recommendations now need to be in your best interest, not just suitable. And that the differences are really subtle and can be complex. But to answer your question, first of all, do some research. Investor.gov is a great place to research advisors. That's on the Securities and Exchange Commission's website. You can check out various disclosures that the advisor has to make, any complaints or regulatory enforcement actions they may have had against them, things like that. I would encourage people to interview multiple. Obviously, the first thing we all do when we're getting ready to make an important purchasing decision is we get online. And I would encourage you to get online, research different types of advisors. A very, very big question I like to ask is, how do you get paid? And how does that create conflicts of interest? All financial advisors have conflicts of interest. You just mentioned the one where, if I go to an advisor who gets paid on commission, and if they recommend a mutual fund to me, let's say they get paid 4% on that. If they recommend an annuity, maybe they get paid 6%. If they recommend a private investment like a real estate fund, maybe they get paid 8%. Well, I'm a consumer. I don't know the difference between any of these things. I'm trusting the advisor to make a recommendation. Not just suitable for me, but hopefully that's in my best interest. But if I'm the advisor, I'm human too. And if yesterday I got my kid's college tuition bill in the mail, and you came to me with your 401k, what should I do with it, or your IRA or whatever, I'm human too, and I respond to incentives. And you see a lot of higher commission products being recommended. Now, that doesn't mean they're bad. I mean, I might pay more for a car because I think it's a better car. Then I don't just, next time I go to buy a car, I'm not just going to look for the cheapest car out there. But I should really make sure I'm getting what I pay for. It was really interesting to me when that whole Department of Labor thing was kind of getting batted back and forth that we talked about before. When it went into place for a period of time, annuity sales went way down. And then when it got back, annuity sales bounced back up. I'm not one who's anti-annuity. I actually own one, but I think that they do tend to pay generous commissions to the salesperson, and so I just feel they get recommended too often. So that's one example. There are two different kinds of advisors. Maybe to finish my answer here, there are. All right, great to see you, Christian. There are. And again, I'll oversimplify this, but there are brokers and there are investment advisors. So a broker is a securities broker. It's important to know that they work for the manufacturer of the products or the distributor of the products. The investment, which is fine, the investment advisor works for you, and they charge you a fee. The broker, if they recommend a product, they get paid by the product. They get paid by the broker or the producer of the product, by the manufacturer or distributor of the product. Now, don't let them tell you that you aren't paying anything. I've heard that too many times. That the let's say the insurance company or the mutual fund company pays them. That comes out of your investment. So don't let them
paying. You're still paying no matter what.
It's coming out of your money. Yeah, for sure. And if you, to the earlier example, if you pick an investment that's paying 4 or 6 or 8%, that comes right off the top. And then, years down the road, that you invested less because you paid that commission, and so you're going to have even less money invested. It's going to turn into a lot less way down the road. The other type is an investment advisor. They work for you. They charge you a fee. A lot of people might not choose that because they say, I don't want to pay a fee. Well, you're paying. These people are professionals. They do deserve to get paid for their work. You're paying one way or another. It's just a little less visible when you're paying a commission. It's more visible when you're paying the investment advisor. They both have their pros and cons. They both have conflicts. Just ask a lot of questions about how they get paid, how that creates conflicts, how they deal with those conflicts, in addition to what services they provide and things like that.
So one of the things that really stuck out to me there is that you are focused on recognizing that whoever it would be, whoever the investor is, the everyday person cannot just blindly trust who they're turning to for financial advice. There has to be a degree of research behind the person that they're going to choose. And I appreciate that perspective, because that's a great way to put your guard up and to make sure that you're not going to be sold something that's not in your best interest. So if you were to do some research, you said investor.gov. Is there anywhere else to look and see if there's been a formal complaint filed against a financial planner?
Yeah, the other place, I got to put my readers on again, investor.gov for investment advisors, and then FINRA, the Financial Industry Regulatory Association, they govern brokers. And they also have a website. I think it's called, like here it is, brokercheck.finra.org, brokercheck.finra.org. And that's a place you can check out brokers, same information, their background, how they're licensed, if they've had any complaints. I would caution too, if you see that they've had a complaint or two or three, don't just say, oh, well, there's no way I would use them. They had a customer complain about them. Any business in the world, if you've been in business for very long and are serving a lot of customers, along the way, you've had some unhappy customers.
True.
So don't just say, oh, they have had a complaint or two, I'm not going to use them. Look more carefully at that. On the other hand, I've seen brokered records where, they've been in business 10 years and had 15 complaints. That's not, most of us, if we have a problem with our advisor, we'll either address it with them, or if we think it's a big enough problem, we'll just pull our money out. We'll go down the road. If someone takes the time to file a formal complaint, they're really upset. So, volume of complaints is one thing, but if it's just a few and this person's been in business for 10 or 20 or 30 years, that wouldn't be an automatic knockout for me. But do your homework and ask questions.
Yeah, it's good to know.
Great advice. You've given us so much good advice so far. I'm wondering, for our listeners that are married, if you had 3 minutes in a room with a married couple, and you could provide any financial advice to them, so that they could manage their finances together better. If you had no knowledge about any of their background as a couple, what would your advice be?
I have been asked that many, many times. And I think in the first decades of my career, and I get asked that question at family gatherings or cocktail parties, what have you.
Yep.
I think after a couple minutes of my answer, I would see them glaze over. And I'm like, okay, I'm being too complicated here. I'm talking my inside baseball. So then I backed way off. And now the first thing I say to people is, this is going to sound dreadfully simple, but spend less than you make. That is rule number one of personal financial planning. Spend less than you make. I don't care if you make $10,000 or $100,000 or $1 million. Spend less than you make. And then save as much as you can when you're young. Again, for at least long-term savings goals like retirement, just put it away in the stock market and just leave it. Just sock away as much as you can. Rule number 2 I often go by is, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. If you got someone at work or a cousin who says, "Hey, I heard about this investment on the internet, whatever, and gosh, it's paying, this X% or whatever," you're like, "Wow, that's, I haven't heard of such a thing that pays like that, or guarantees." Watch the word guarantee. I would, I mean, I've learned just turn and run when I hear things like that, but at least start asking a lot of questions. Don't just say, "Gosh, my cousin told me about this investment, I'm going to put, so much of my money into it." If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. What else? Well, we talked about this already, but hire a professional. We all hire professional doctors and lawyers and home builders, and for all these things we need dentists and on and on. Professors for education. We don't educate ourselves, really. We hire a professional. We hire a professional to help us with medical and so on. Our financial lives are very, very important. You screw that up, and you can't wake up at age 55 and you've really royally screwed that up. So get professional help along the way. It used to be that you really had to have a lot of money to hire a financial advisor. And there are new business models emerging where you can hire a financial advisor and pay them a monthly fee to guide you. And you meet with them periodically. You can pick up the phone anytime and call them. They probably put out lots of educational content that can help you make decisions. I'm really, really encouraged and excited about that business model. And I point my kids are in their 20s and 30s. I point them to those sources because you don't have to have a lot of money to need help. So get professional help along the way as well. I think I went over 3 minutes, but
no. So spend less than you make, save as much as you can early, particularly investing, so you take advantage of compounding. And then the third is hire an independent person to help you make informed decisions.
Right. Yep.
And I'll never forget reading in a book, and I do forget which book. It was either Ron Lieber's book or Jonathan Clement's, but that one of the wedding gifts. So I would have been Jonathan Clement's. A wedding gift that he decided to give his kids was before they got married. He set up a fee-only meeting with a financial planner with the two of them, and the reason for that is it forced them to flush out the truth behind their personal finances. And that if there was any past debt, if there were any problems, that meeting would flush that out, because you have to bring, your finances to the table, and that it gives the financial planner an opportunity to be able to be an intermediary and to guide the conversation to make sure that they're on the same page before they get married, because a lot of it's just opening up the conversation. And I heard that and I thought to myself, wow, I don't know if there's a better gift I could give my kids for their wedding, which is one of the gifts I will give them if they choose to get married, is that opportunity to make sure that when they do get married, they at least know financially what they're getting into, and they've taken that first step together, rather than figuring it out, over dinner or get a bill in the mail. That, wait a second, my spouse has $100,000 in student loan debt, and I've heard those stories.
I have too.
We've all heard them.
Yeah.
Well, your insight today was incredible. We know you're very busy and appreciate your time. Thanks so much for joining us today.
It's been a fun conversation, as I knew it would be, and it's great to meet you guys and spend time. You're doing good work.
Thank you.
Thank you, Skip.
Christian, Dr. Ross, and I thank our listeners and our guest. Please be sure to go to modernhusbands.com, where you can subscribe to our podcast. You can listen to our podcast in whatever platform you prefer: Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, or even on YouTube. Until next time, be well.